Back here on the show to get into this topic that I wanted to bring up on today's episode. Looking at which teams are 0-1, a lot of surprises we had in the first week on some surprising upsets like the Patriots over the Bengals, and you could even say good teams finding themselves in an 0-1 position like the Ravens, um, like the Colts potentially, surprising a lot of people with how well they competed against the Houston Texans, the Jets as well. There's a lot of good teams here that need a win, I believe, in my opinion, this week to kind of not only get back on track, but not have more pressure pile up on them, if that makes sense. So we're gonna look through all these 0-1 matchups that we have in week 2 and just decide what is going into these games and who needs the win more in all of these matchups. So moving into our first team, our first matchup of 0-1 against 0-1 teams, we have coming up here the Colts at the Green Bay Packers, right? The Colts off of a loss to the Houston Texans, but they didn't play bad whatsoever, honestly. It was a score of 29-27, and I think for a lot of it, my critiques of the Colts were that the running game was sort of there with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. The big plays were certainly there, right? Everybody saw that amazing throw by Anthony Richardson to Alec Pierce. There was another one also down the field as well. But I'd like to see it be more efficient, not just so sudden, right? With just a bomb down the field and having it work out for you. Most of the time, as we go through the weeks, that is going to be tried to be taken away. So I would like to see more of a steady, put together offensive sequence from these guys. But regardless of that, they still played well. They played up to the level of competition with Houston. So I like the Colts and their outlook in this game, especially because on the other side, we have Jordan Love less Packers, right? You see Malik Willis up there on the graphic, and it's concerning, right? Because you look at that game against the Eagles, as much as it was a close game or potentially written off, you still had Jordan Love just get hurt in that last sequence, which is just so unlucky for this team with how much pressure is placed upon them just right off of the bat based on what we saw from Jordan Love last year. It's a lot now, and especially in that division, it could be something that could come back to bite them if they start 0-2. I don't see the Lions dropping many games once they play each other. Those matchups start to become more significant because you try to make up games now if you start 0-2, and based off of that, these are two good teams overall. I want to make that clear. Both of them could have been 1-0 if you really look at those games, but because that wasn't the case, because I'm so impressed with Indianapolis, even though it's in Green Bay, I think I'm going to go with the Colts just because I think they continue to build on this momentum that they had in that first game. When you play up to a level of competition like that, it usually kind of surprises you in a way, and it fills you even more with confidence knowing that you were that close to winning that game. So I like the Colts in this one to go to 1-1, and now at 0-2, the Packers, what does that mean for Jordan Love? When does he come back? It's going to have a big effect on them. I think Jordan Love, as much as Matt LaFleur wants to say that the door is still open for him to play this week, I think he will at least miss this game, and then he could potentially be back in week 3 against the Minnesota Vikings. But I like the Colts' chances of going 1-1 after this game. Then we move on to the Raiders at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are 9-point favorites in this game. Both of them are 0-1, where the Ravens could make a good case that they should be 1-0. There are still some questions about them, though, on how they use Derrick Henry, how often they use them, and how he fits in the overall offense with getting Mark Andrews more involved because he really wasn't a factor. Isaiah Likely now, how much more do you use him after his breakout performance? Zay Flowers was a prominent figure in the offense. And then you have Lamar. Also, his running ability. There's a lot of the ball to go around, but you just can't not use Derrick Henry, right? So that's something that they're going to have to wrestle with going forward. But overall, Their defense also looked a little bit shaky, but they still have good players overall on that defense, whereas the Raiders are in more of a dire outlook in this week, in week 2. Just, their offense lacked explosiveness, any sort of creativity. The running game really wasn't there with Zamir White. I feel like the Raiders need this win more based on the question, right? In week 2, but I feel like the Ravens are going to end up winning this game, but in terms of need and effect that this could have, I think that goes for the Raiders, like I said, because if I were to say went to the Ravens, I think even at 0-2, I think people wouldn't jump off that bandwagon. So the Raiders, I think, need this win. I don't think they're going to get it, but they need it just so it could give some more confidence to Gardner Minshew in making that decision. You don't want Devontae Adams to be upset, frustrated, and then you get some outlandish comments afterwards. So it's very delicate right now for the Raiders because I like the players that they have, but I think they just need to piece it together a little bit more. Maybe it's not this week. I'm not expecting it to be, but maybe at least a good performance could go a long way for them. And then moving on to our next game that I have here, the Browns and the Jaguars. Two former Clemson quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars and really the Browns also had struggling offenses in their last games. They struggled to get things going really in either the run game and the passing game, again, for both teams. And the Jaguars were shut out in the second half, which isn't something that is acceptable, really, with how they'd like to be looked at in the NFL compared to other teams. You can't just be shut out and give up that lead in the second half. So that's one thing. They basically gave the win away to the Dolphins, where it would have been a big win for them, getting it on the road. And a lot of the similarities with the Browns, their offense, Deshaun Watson, we've talked about it a lot already this week. They desperately need Deshaun to at least show them something. I don't think Houston Deshaun is coming back at all or anytime soon, so it doesn't have to be Houston Deshaun, but at least show us something that we could work with, right? Joe Flacco, show us, no disrespect to Joe Flacco, but show us the Joe Flacco level of coming off of your couch, walking in, being the starting quarterback. At least show us that level, right? You don't have to be an MVP candidate. You don't have to be a comeback player of the year, but Deshaun has to pick it up a little bit more. This team is too talented to start 0-2. This Browns team is way too talented. Their defense is way too good. And also, more pressure, more frustration is growing after week 1 for Deshaun. So I feel like Cleveland needs this win more because they're a better roster, and I think there's more expectations on them in 2024 than there is that placed on the Jaguars. So also, just to close it out, Deshaun Watson's reputation is also, they can't take many more hits on Deshaun Watson's reputation, right? He's already been chastised throughout this week and leading up to this year, so they can't take many more hits, many more body blows to Deshaun and not expect for fans and people to be calling for his job. So all of that to just say Cleveland definitely needs this win more over the Jaguars. Again, on the road for Cleveland. Hopefully Deshaun can show us something there in that game. Then a couple more games here. We have the Jets and the Titans in this next matchup. Back-to-back road games for the New York Jets. Their offense played better than their defense, where on the other side, the Titans' defense definitely played better than their offense. The Titans should be 1-0. They didn't allow an offensive touchdown, but they somehow still lost the game, and somehow the Bears ended up scoring 24 points. The defense didn't give up a single touchdown, so it's just crazy that that happened to be the case. Will Levis, we're not going to talk about the throw that he made. Obviously, shouldn't have done that. So now moving forward moving to the Jets, I should say, there should be more help around Garrett Wilson. I think we're going to see more of that in this week against the Tennessee Titans. They should, and I feel like they are going to establish Breece Hall a little bit more. Their defense, I'm expecting to respond after getting just exposed against the 49ers. So all of that wrapped into one. And the fact that Will Levis, didn't have a great week one. He also needs to bounce back in the passing game because they didn't really involve DeAndre Hopkins too much. So that's something that obviously should be addressed. But I feel like the Jets need this win more with how, the whole Hassan Reddick situation and their defense as well. The coaching as well. There's a lot of pressure on Robert Saleh and even Nathaniel Hackett as well. And Aaron Rodgers, going into the media saying that everybody just needs to relax a little bit. So if you say that, you can't fall to 0-2 right after that. So I think the Jets will get this win. I think they need it more, and I feel like they'll get it certainly in this game. Then here also talking about the Giants and the Commanders, the need for me has to go to the Commanders just because the Giants, saying whatever you want about Daniel Jones, I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. So, speaking about Daniel Jones, it's hard at this point to hit a new low with him, but you can't be outplayed by a rookie quarterback with only one top-tier weapon. Even if the argument could be made that the Giants only have one top-tier weapon as well, Daniel Jones has been in the league for, I don't know, maybe like 4 years at least or something like that. Jaden Daniels is in his first year. Yeah, you might say he's more talented, but you can't be drastically outplayed by him. One of the worst teams, arguably, in the NFL, in the Giants as well. So Daniel Jones enters this week with a lot of pressure, obviously. Daniels, on the other side, was the entire offense for the Commanders in their game against the Bucs. So this one should be a bit closer, and I'm anticipating the Commanders scored 20 points in that game. So I feel like their offense, their team is in a better spot. They need to win more. They should win this game. They are a better team than the Giants. They have a better quarterback than them. I have more expectations for them, basically, as to why I feel the Commanders need this win even more than the Giants. And then lastly here, to just wrap it up quickly, the Rams and the Arizona Cardinals, back-to-back road games for the Rams. I was surprised by how good the Cardinals offense played, but their defense didn't live up to that, so that is a concern. The Rams, on the other hand, were killed by injuries, so how do they change things, forcefully, with having to adjust to a new O-line? How does that affect the run game? Is Matthew Stafford going to be protected? All of those things wrapped into one. Also, on the Cardinals side, how much more is Marvin Harrison Jr. involved after only getting, I think, one reception for 4 yards against the Bills? So with that being the case, the need to win this game has to be the Los Angeles Rams. They have a big mountain to climb in this one with those injuries. I really think it has crippled them greatly to start the year. But the expectations and the sort of need to survive, really, apart from these injuries, I think is going to be huge for them. If they could keep their head above water and win this game, because they need to win this game, it's going to benefit them a lot. Once Puka comes back, once that offensive line gets healthy, the Rams need to win this game. I think they're capable of doing it because the Cardinals' defense wasn't that great. So the need goes to the Rams to win this game overall. And that's all the games of 0-1 teams facing off against each other. But we have one more segment to get to on today's show. Just going through my game picks on the first couple of games here in week 2, and I'll finish that up with the rest of the games in tomorrow's show as well. So stay tuned. I'm going to give you some game picks here for the start of the NFL week 2 regular season games here, kicking off with the Bills and the Miami Dolphins in just a few minutes. We'll be right back.